What's happening, guys? Welcome back to the Hunting Challenge. I had the privilege and opportunity to sit down with two well sought after professional hunters that get it done consistently year in and year out. These guys aren't your average hunters. They've been on podcasts throughout the nation. Simply put, they're very knowledgeable about bow hunting big bucks. This is a 4-part series, so be sure to subscribe and hit the notifications so you can be notified as I roll out new parts of this series. So with all that said, let's get rolling. Just to wrap up, we've covered a lot of good information. The last little bit that I want to cover now, going back to hunting the leeward side in the hill country, the question I have is, again, going back to South Jersey, even if there's, just to say, a 50-foot incline, will that same effect come into play, that same strategy come into play?
Yeah, I definitely think so. 50-foot rise in Jersey is huge. Yeah. You know, that's like Molokai Hill.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think it's like 62 feet or something.
Yeah, there's
like
a lot of draws and whatnot around
Yeah.
those creeks. So yeah, that will have an effect on what they're doing, how they're bedding, and how they're using it.
What I've found, to be honest with you, like a lot of the areas I hunt, there's a lot of man-made dikes and flood control dikes in the swamps. You know what I mean? To keep the tides and keep the water in the marshes instead of coming up over the banks. There's man-made banks all over in a lot of the places I hunt, and they use those things just like they're a mountain, you know. And another thing too is it could be an 18-inch or a 2-foot rise in a swamp, and they utilize that exactly the way they use ridges. Yeah. Exactly. Like it could only be 18 inches off of elevation change, you know, just a strip of hollies or something that goes out. And they utilize those holly bumps, those holly root balls that are in a line like they're a ridge, and they'll actually be like bed and travel on the leeward side too. You know what I mean? Yeah. So.
All right. So during the pre-rut, Todd, you mentioned that you do some calling. I haven't had success doing any calling. Greg, have you had any?
I haven't had in any state. Kentucky, New York, PA, Maryland. Negative. I break out a grunt call. Even Long Island. My buddy hunted it, kills giant deer. They all come to calls, as they say. I see a big buck. He told me by this one. I forget what brand. He's hit him with that, and I'm like, they come running every time. I'm like, brrr. They're like, dude. I'm like, I just put my one opportunity at a 150-inch buck. The deer was like, I'm out, and I'm like, wow, that's great. And I was like, I'm just throw this thing in the trash. I was like, I'll just hunt El Natural, like a ninja, a ghost.
Back when we were at your house, DJ mentioned using a decoy. Have either of you tried any decoys?
I tried an old half a 3D1 20 years ago and had 2 bucks come in, which is odd for middle of November. 2 bucks side by side. Maybe they were fond of one another, I don't know, but they did not like a doe decoy. They literally ran into each other, did a backflip, and it's like, wow, I could have killed both of you. And a decoy was like, I got other plans. You're not killing anything.
I've never used a decoy. I just never have.
It's more carry.
Yeah, I know DJ's always pushing me to get one. Like, you got to get one of these things. They're awesome.
Once he brought up the technique that he uses, and I'm like, I might have to try that, especially in the salt marsh, because I'll see them sometimes, and there's ground to make up. I can do it. But with a doe, and I think a decoy might be, his strategy might make it work. I don't think a single one is going to pull a buck off, but 2 might be,
Yeah.
Well, I got one of those. I can't remember the brand that he got, but he and I had the same one. He had the buck, I had the doe. I put it out one time last year, and I got a lot of turkeys. Turkeys came right up to it. It's a doe, not
right.
Buck,
oh, it's safe over there. Look, there's a deer. Go ahead.
Well, if you can get turkeys to come to something, it looks pretty.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Yeah. So during the rut, now we're there. Everybody takes off for this time of year. Do you do anything different other than finding like the traditional pinch point or saddle if you're hunting like hill country or anything like that?
For me, I've been trying to find more bottlenecks between doe bedding areas. It's going to funnel deer down. I think, hunting a single doe bed on the down one side, you're not putting odds in your favor. like in along the canals, I know where there's doe groups. Well, the canal goes up like this, I'll just set right in there. I don't walk the water's edge. There's 2 bedding areas. Odds are I'm increasing my odds by sitting a funnel in between 2 doe bedding areas. Even in the mountains, the same thing. Hunting just a singular doe group, if they've already been bred or already cycled out early, then there's why is the buck gonna come down there? So for me, it's as much as I'd like to hunt, doe bedding groups, I'll just stick to funnels. Like I said, I'm not the best rod. Once mid-November comes, it's tough. Like I'll see a buck, but usually they're trucking. Coming through that funnel, it's like, hey, look, and he's gone. Yeah. No matter what you're doing, like he's on a mission, and it's like I'm not going to shoot at a buck that's on the move. A gun, yeah, I'd probably have 30 more deer on my wall if I was a gun hunting during the rut, because I see a lot of big bucks, but they just don't stop.
For me, the rut, I'm gonna do like Greg says. I'm looking for pinch points downwind of doe bedding areas, in between doe bedding areas. Where bucks are gonna be traveling, looking for does. Daytime movement. Most of my buck sightings are usually between about 9:30 in the morning and 1 o'clock is generally when I see the biggest bucks of the day.
So you guys sitting all day during the rut?
Yeah, and another thing that I'll do a lot different is there'll be like every other part of the season, I'm scouting on my way in to set up. In the rut, I pretty much have trees picked out, and I'm beelining to that thing. But what I do is, like we talked about earlier, is I like to approach from the downwind side. So my boot tracks, my ground scent, and my stream scent are going to be the same all day long.
Effects.
You know what I mean? So I get a lot more area to be able to shoot, be more effective.
And I use, even like with water or even terrain, you can use edge cover as terrain, where deer, if it's like an inside corner or something's going to just funnel deer down. That terrain never changes. Like food might change, even doe bedding, where they're actually bedding 50 yards off, but like a terrain feature is never going to change. It's one of the most consistent things that's in a deer, in the deer woods. So you might not be a lot of movement there, but that deep cut, inside corner, or just a hedgerow or something, all deer, sooner or later, you sit there 5 days in a row, you're probably going to kill something. It's very boring hunting, especially for me. Like it drives me crazy, but I do see a lot of deer if I'm going to sit one of those terrain features like 3 or 4 days in a row. It requires a mental thing that I've gotten better at as I've gotten older. 20 years ago, I'd like throw one sit, and like, this is boring. I'm not saying anything, I gotta go.
So for me, the difference is I have preset, not preset like I got I may have hunted that tree for years. Right. You know what I mean, for that time of year. So I got a tree that I'm going to. It's not necessarily I'm scouting my way in. The rest of the year, I'm gonna have all my snacks, my food, anything to keep me warm, anything that time of year is about tree stand time. You know what I mean? I don't necessarily have to be in before light in the morning. I'll go in gray light a lot of times in the rut. Yeah. What I've noticed, and like I said, 9:30 to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I feel like the bucks have been chasing does all night. They've been hitting them on the food sources and back to the beds, and I think the bucks lay down, and about 9:30 in the morning is when they start popping back up. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's normally when I see like the biggest buck of the day.
The whole proverbial 10 to 2.
Yeah.
Is that bucks are napping, because bucks don't. They're not running 24/7, 365. They're still going to eat, just not going to eat a lot. They're going to nap. Yeah. They're not going to sleep. They're going to nap. Yeah. And like I said, with the gray light, it's super important. But as you're hunting the funnel, no sense being there an hour before light, because for me, it's a waste of time. That's more time I can get better sleep, so I can sit all day. Because trying to get no sleep, get in there, an hour before daylight and sit all day every day, and then you're paddling in or you're hiking in it. You can't do that 4 days in a row. You're gonna start making mistakes or leave early, or I can't say it's noon, I'm tired, I'm miserable, I'm cold, I'm hungry. So you're better off getting an extra hour or two of sleep, getting there at gray light, or even like 8 o'clock, just slowly still hunting your way in.
Yeah.
And then getting those little rut funnels and just sit all day.
The only time that like during the rut, during November, the only time I'm gonna get in early if I'm paddling in is if I'm on an area that there's a lot of duck hunters. You know what I mean? I'll try to get in there out of respect for them. Try to get through before shooting light comes up, You know what I mean? Try to get through their
He just doesn't want to get
shot and dumped somewhere. Yeah.
Sprayed
But out of
with
respect
seal
for
shot.
fellow hunters, you know what I mean? If you know you're going to be going by a couple of blinds or something like that, more than likely, if it's a Saturday morning, there's going to be guys in there hunting. Try to get in there before them, just out of respect for them. You know what I mean? If you're hunting in an area where, and this happens, you know, you're in an area where there's maybe some other people that kind of know your truck and know that you're going in, you know what I mean? And maybe they're starting to paddle in some of these areas too. You know, you may want to get in before light and get your canoe, you know, put in reeds or something like that, get it tucked away so other people can't see exactly where you're hunting.
The only time I get in super early during the rut is catch the tide, riding the tide out.
If
I got to catch the tide, if it's a 3 a.m. high tide, I'll sit till the tide comes back up, 10 to 2. If I got to ride in at 3 a.m., it sucks, but that's what I got to do, you know. But it's like I said, if I can sleep in and hunt all day, by all means, I'm going to sleep in. Because as we get older, it gets tougher. I don't know why. Like to sit all day, it's 3 or 4 days. It's brutal for me. You know, anymore. Like I don't know, it's just comfort wise, or my body's like, nah.
And let's face it too. Like, you know, that time of year, you got all your family things, your work things that are normally going on, and then you know, you got those little windows in November where, you know, you and your buddies may not have seen, you know, all your local friends might not have seen bucks moving from the 1st through the 6th. And all of a sudden you get that window from the 7th through the 9th, everything turned on. For whatever the reason is, if it's lockdown just got over with the lockdown phase or whatever. But a lot of times you get a phone call from a friend and said, I shot one last night. But yet that was Friday night. You go down there and help them track until 12 o'clock in the morning. And Saturday's your day to hunt. You know what I mean? It's good to be able to sleep in a little bit, drink your coffee, you know, and go in right at gray light. And to me, you're not hurting nothing. The does are generally already going to be kind of back at that time. They're going to be really close to their beds. You know what I mean? The bucks are kind of laid up too, I think.
Well, it's one thing.
You know,
I'm hunting with Johnny in Western PA. Is he likes going in at gray light, you know, and
Just during the rut. Like
even during hunting season, he'll hunt his way in, you know, especially during the rut. Like the first time I went hunting with him, he's like, we're going to go in super early. There's no cell phone service, so we download maps. As I was going in, it's pitch black. I'm like, man, I smell a buck, and a deer snorted and ran off, and I, you know, didn't see nothing the rest of that morning. And he was like, you know, I probably should have set you in a gray light. You know, you probably could have seen that deer. He might have been bedded off that scrape or whatever, you know, and you still hunt up this old logging road or whatever. You might have seen some movement, might have seen some horns. You know, he might have been with some does, but going in at gray light, especially where you're going to be close to hunting, like sometimes you got to time it, you know, with paddle or hiking in. Like, all right, gray lights say at, you know, at 6:30. Well, all right, going at dark at 6:30, you're close to your tree. Just take a couple steps and watch that. But I mean, the buck I killed last year in PA, it was never been in that area. Johnny, you know, you look at the map, like there's definitely 2 points of old clear cut and older clear cut. So there's an edge, and it's a lot of cherries. So he's like, I want you to get right on this edge. I was too far in. I want you to come out a little bit. Well, if I went in there in dark, you know, poking and hoping, I would have, you know, walking in great. I'm like, all right, there's a trail right here. So I kind of walked down that trail a little bit. I'm like, all right, there's another trail here. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to set, it's gray light. I can still see, you know, and I still had the light on, and I set the tree up, and that buck came in pretty much right next to the trail I walked in on. But if it was dark, I might have been 50 yards this way. But if I missed that trail, the deer were crossing. So gray light, you can still scout. I mean, you know, tell you can still see movement or deer. You know,
I scout. Sometimes I'll scout my way in with my headlamp. You know what I mean, to get in the right tree. You know what I mean, like.
Especially,
go ahead.
Yeah, especially during the rut, or even just a spot you've never really been into before. You're kind of like freelancing, freestyle hunting, whatever you want to call it. Like if you're 50 yards off, I mean, you're out of the game 100%, and you can tell like I just threw deer in that trail. And then you walk down a trail or you see browse. I mean, that morning I killed my buck, I seen browse, you know, with my headlamp. You know, I'm like,
it's good.
Deer nipping right there. That's when I was like, all right, I'm in that area he was kind of talking about, you know, and it paid off.
Yeah. So there's also this talk about like annual, I guess it's annual habits or whatever the case may be. Like if you say on November 1st, last year, I saw this one buck in this particular spot. is there any truth, or have you witnessed it, that November 1st, the second year, or around about, could be the 31st or the 2nd?
Cameras give me historical data, and historical for me has got to be like 3 years of good intel. Like I was telling Todd here, I got a spot in Salt Marsh. There's a 3-day window in November where a whopper comes through and checks this one scrape. It's 3 days. That scrape's pretty much dormant day walking, except for those 3 days. And that's been, working on 4 or 5 years now. I don't know why it is. It's just when he just shows up. It could be, 130-inch buck, and last year I probably had a 155-inch buck come through. I was hunting, because the wind was awful. Last year I was hunting over there, and he came through, and it's like, but it's the same 3 days. Don't know why. And I got another scrape. There's a 3-day window. That deer just the 29th, 30th, and 31st. Day walkers galore from 8 to about 2. So there must be a doe group that comes in the heat, kind of in that same time frame. And all them bucks know that, so they go through there, chase those does out, move them around, and then I might get a straggler come in, but it's just there's little time frames. It's pretty consistent year in, year out, and usually it's on does. There might be I was talking to Clint, I think Don Higgins or somebody, or Steve, I forget who it was, but doe groups, the same doe will come in heat usually within a couple of days, and she passes that down to, so you might have a group of does that all come in heat within a 3-day window. Well, that's a lot of scent in the air. And the bucks are like, all the bucks are like, oh, party time. Every year it's the same thing, so they kind of just gravitate towards that area.
Well, you kind of took that one from me. That's where I was going to go with it, because I don't run trail cameras.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't generally hunt the same trees.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I don't normally have a lot of history. I might have sheds off. I've killed a few bucks that I got a couple years of sheds off them, a single or a double, or I got one deer that I never ever did kill, but I got 6 years worth of, either a single or like 3 different sets of the same buck. And every one of those sheds was within 100 yards of each other over those 6 years. You know what I mean? So,
so there's
absolutely. But he, Greg kind of took what I was going to say. So I don't have history with bucks like that because I don't run trail cameras. But I do know that I have areas where there's a doe that comes into heat on the 27th of October every year. And every 3-year-old and under will be chasing her when that day that she really comes into heat on the 27th. I killed a nice 9-pointer. I don't know, this is the last year I was hunting with a compound, so this is my 5th year, about 5 years ago. And it was the 27th of October. I was getting ready to go to Ohio for a week that night, and I took the day off. So I said, well, I might as well hunt. Went into a stand, and I had 14 bucks come by chasing one doe. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just one right after the other, after the other, after the other.
So you just...
That was the 27th of October. Yep. You know what I mean? That goes against almost 10 years ago what people would say about the rut and does coming in heat. And guys are starting to figure it out now.
Why?
Guys are starting to figure out there's windows. There's another thing that happens, and you've probably seen this, especially in South Jersey. South Jersey has this weird thing, and I've talked to a lot of old-time hunters. Around October 15th and 16th, you'll get a random doe that is either she's like right before her cycle's coming in or something. She's a real early bird, and you'll have a buck parade on the October 15th or 16th. I mean, that's almost a full 3 weeks before does are supposed to really the prime breeding season, And
I've had them. I used to have footage back when I first got into filming. It was September 25th. This doe was in heat. I'm hunting the marsh, and I'm sitting in the tree, like she comes out like super edgy and sketchy. I'm like, little doe, like a little 80-pounder, 70-pounder. And next thing I just hear brr, brr. I'm like, and it's just like this giant wide 6-pointer. I would have shot him, if I could have got a chance. But he come out, reeds galore, on her ass, and then like another little buck come out, and I was like, and they're chasing this. I mean, they bird dogged that doe. She probably killed her. I mean, they were on her all night long. Like, I felt bad for her. It's like you watch them when ducks, when a group of mallards go after that one hen, and you're like, I feel bad for that. But these bucks were on her because she was small. It didn't know how to defend herself. It didn't, she was just exhausted. They were probably running her to exhaustion. And it was September, probably the 28th. It was near my birthday. So it was the end of September.
That's really early.
And I'm like, this is crazy. And I talked to a few biologists. like marine biologists and whatnot, and they were like, generally all animals will be bred in a certain time frame, but to carry on the species, everything can't happen in this small window. Because if there's especially like mammals, there's a big winter kill. If all these does are bred in this week, well, the species can't carry on. So there's going to be early birds and late birds.
Outliers of
and that's going to help
animals,
continuation of the species. I'm like, I'll buy that. That makes sense.
Yeah, the thing about it is like the October 15th thing, the September 25th thing, you've seen it once.
Yeah.
I've seen it a few different times around October 16th,
Yeah.
and 7th, or 15th and 16th. You can't make a plan for it.
Yeah.
It's so random. You see it 3 or 4 times in your career. You've seen it one time so far in your career that early. You can't make a plan for it.
Yeah.
But it's just to know that they're, you know.
You did mention, though, you said something when you see on that particular date, not the 15th or 16th.
27th.
Yeah, the 27th, you said you'd see every 3-year-old or younger chasing that doe.
Mm-hmm.
Why'd you stop at 3-year-old? What about that?
That's the deer that we're chasing.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
yeah.
All right, so-
Well, there's not many 5-year-olds running around
so
South Jersey.
and this is what we'll wrap up. And Todd, you and I spoke about it a little bit earlier. So, in your opinion, what's are you saying a 3.5-year-old is a mature buck for 3-4-year-old?
I'm not calling it necessarily a mature buck. What I'm calling it is a shooter. To me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think that's fair for Jerry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like a 2.5. I think I was reading somewhere or heard somebody. 2.5 is a sexually mature buck. There's sexually mature where they're I don't know what that actually term means, and then like Todd said, matures a little later on. Mature as in like an age.
Yeah.
You know? But for me, on average, 2.5 is going to get you probably mid 115s around here on average, plus or minus. 3.5 is going to get you into that 130 range. So not always, but usually that's a good like rule of thumb here in South Jersey. Some deer have really good genes.
Yeah.
You know, I killed my biggest antler buck was 3.5, and he was 140. And I've killed a 6-year-old.
Well, there was a guy in Elmer that shot a 140-inch year-and-a-half-year-old by tooth.
Yep.
By tooth.
Yeah. And I've
somebody
killed-
was. I've never seen the picture or nothing, but a buddy of mine told me, he was like, there was a 140-inch 1.5-year-old shot in Elmer.
like, you
It
know-
was probably 10 years ago or something.
Yeah, and
I mean, that's what? There's supposed to be a spike or a fork. You know what I mean? Maybe a basket rack 8.
that's, you know, and then I've killed 4 and 5 and 6-year-olds that barely pushed 115. So it's like that's just genetics, bad food.
Getting to age though
Yep.
too. Like when we talk about that stuff, for me and you talked about this at my house a few weeks back. To me, because I don't see a whole lot of 5s and olders, you know what I mean. But to me, the change seems to happen for us here in South Jersey. The behavioral change, the real change happens between the 3.5 and the 4-year-olds. When they hit 4.5 years old in the fall, they're not doing the same things that the 3-year-old. Some 3-year-olds will still do the 2.5-year-old things, chasing the doe on the 27th,
Yeah.
and he's number 14 in line.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not the guy up in the front. You know what I mean?
And
The 4-year-olds didn't see any 4-year-olds that day. You know what I mean? Trust me, there's 4-year-olds in those woods. Yeah. You know what I mean?
well, that's one thing. Like hanging out with John and Rick and Long Island. The bigger deer, once they reach certain 4 or 5, they're not going berserker mode. They're not chasing. They're going to breed 1 or 2 does, get out of their system, and go back into survival mode, especially in high pressure areas, because the 4-year-old might be a guy to say like ours, like 40. You know, they don't need all these little things. Like they know what they want, but survival's the name of the game. When you reach a certain point, so you're not going to see many 5, 6-year-olds in New Jersey running berserker mode. They're going to get their 1 or 2 does, usually in the cover of darkness. They'll go out and still do their thing, but it's straight survival. You know, they're going to get. The name of the game is...
Yeah, I think they have a different way of breeding too.
Yeah.
I think that they don't necessarily have to chase. They can come in, pick her,
And they know.
and push her, and
Yep.
they got places to go push her, and they're going to go push her into this area that's the weird place where you see a big buck on the side of the road in some little ditch.
Yep.
You know what I mean? If you're looking, you know what I mean. Not every human looks for
Yep.
these things, but the hunters are always looking for deer, and you see that tank with a doe in some spot. You know what I mean? Around the 15th of October or of November. You know what I mean? I think possibly some of those bucks may not be able to get things lined up the way they want. Like he may not have been able to push that third doe into an area where he feels comfortable. You know what I mean? Like we're not going to get killed here. We're going over there where there's no other bucks here. They're going to come in here and stab me in the ribs with side T-bone meat. You know what I mean? Just me and you over here. If he can't get those things lined up, he may just draw back and wait for another doe that he can, but in his area.
Right.
But then again, we have the way the rut also works is that week of Thanksgiving.
That's when
The does start drying up. The bucks have bred the ones in their area. They might have went to their B area to go over, you know what I mean, that's in an area that they've been to during the rut before with a doe. So they're somewhat familiar with it. They maybe bred a doe over there. They come back around the 20th or something back to their home area, and then all of a sudden they make some strange push right around Thanksgiving where they go into an area like the big bucks, the older bucks. They'll make some move into an area that they're totally vulnerable for a day or two to find a doe. You know what I mean? And a lot of times when you see those deer those days, they're by themselves and they're looking. They're not with a doe. You know what I mean? They're not necessarily with a doe. They're just in an area that they're completely out of their realm, and they're, you know, and they're cruising, you know, and they're not necessarily with a doe. They're all in an area looking in an area that they're not familiar with.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right around Thanksgiving.
I get a lot of day walkers on camera that time of year around here.
Okay.
Around Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, as we talk about the 4-year-old, and we'll wrap up on this. As we talk about the 4-year-old compared to even the 3-year-old and younger, is their home range smaller? They're not going to be going outside of that home range. So, and I'm talking about all through the season. I mean, rut's going to be a little bit different. I mean, you just mentioned that they might go, whatever, a mile, 2 mile, 3 mile away, or whatever. You can say that. I'm saying that.
Yeah.
Those 3 days out of the rut. But for the most part, are the more mature bucks staying in an area that, a smaller area, general area?
I think those,
or the small bucks?
personally, I think they're around here, you know, it's like I say, because we're not the Midwest. I think a 4-year-old deer is a different breed of animal, different creature. Like Todd said, they graduate, they start, you know, up in the ante, and they're just going to just stay in a smaller, safer area. You know, outside of the rut, you're not going to get much movement of them, you know, outside of their little core area unless they didn't like satisfy their numbers. Like, oh, you know, I need to breed 3 does, or that the nature say, all right, you need to breed once more, you know, to go. So that's when they'll venture out a little bit more and out of their norm, because a buck could be with a doe, you know, there could be a small doe group, and the other does get pushed out by another buck. They chase them all out. So he might not have got his fill in his little core area. So he might be like, all right, I got to venture out a little bit more, you know, and they'll probably keep pushing that envelope. And if he satisfies his needs, maybe he'll come back. You know, I need to breed more, I didn't get what I need to get out, that's when they're going to, you know, me personally, they're going to make those mistakes. And guy will be like, oh, I shot this buck, I never seen him before. Because he was literally living over here, and he's like, I go out here, and, you know, and that's how you get killed, because they don't know where hunters are going to be and whatnot.
Yeah. So I consider a 4-year-old here like a 5 or 6-year-old in the Midwest, where there's a lot of them. You know what I mean? A 4-year-old it's a different animal. He's probably got like a 5 or a 6-year-old in the Midwest or whatever. He's got areas that have been working for him. You know what I mean? He made it to 4.5 years old. You know, he made it through the bait pile stage when he was 1, going in there. He's, you know what I mean? He understands the way humans are utilizing the land, and he's found that the places that are safe.
Those
for
little
him at 4
seams
years
that just no
old.
humans go. You know?
Yeah.
And that's why I gravitate toward here recently to bigger areas of hunting, because I think they can get away around humans. You know, 200-acre piece, you're limited. A buck's limited in his movement. You know, and there could be private farms all around. But there's, you know, it could be hammered as well, and that little piece of public could be his sanctuary. But if you got, you know, 1,000-acre piece, he's got seams in the way he can get through there without being detected by humans.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, so we're going to wrap it up there. Hopefully, I know I got some nuggets out of this, and you guys should go check out. Greg has a YouTube channel, Bow Hunting Fiend. Instagram. You're not running a YouTube channel, are you?
I haven't put anything on there.
Nothing on there.
15 years.
UP Bow Hunter. I'll put the links up there. They'll be showing up. If you guys have any questions, again, this was specific for New Jersey. We get a bad rap. Everybody thinks it's all city. We got plenty. It's called the Garden State for a reason. We got plenty of
South Jersey.
It's South Jersey.
Should be 2 states.
And South Jersey's getting smaller and smaller apparently. But
It should be 2 states. But anyway, plenty of public land for everybody to hunt. So if you're interested in getting started in hunting, there's plenty of opportunity, and hopefully this video gave you some good tips and tricks and tactics to go out and be successful this fall. Until then, we'll see y'all. All right, so that's a wrap for this segment of this 4-part series. Let me remind you one more time, for the next 30 days, anybody that subscribes to my channel, I will donate $1 to Bow Hunters United. So be sure to subscribe and hit that notifications bell, and be on the lookout for the next part of this series. Appreciate y'all watching. See y'all.